Cheers.
Hello friends, and welcome back to my kitchen adventures. Today we'll be doing another recipe from the Magnolia Table cookbook. This recipe is the biscuits, JoJo's biscuits that we'll make. We'll be using those biscuits in two ways. One, we're gonna make some strawberry shortcake, and two, we're gonna make some biscuits and gravy. So this is a recipe I first made a couple of years ago. It turns out buttery, light, and fluffy. So let's start making it. First, we're gonna add some self-raising flour. We're gonna mix our dry ingredients together. This flour has baking powder and salt in it to help with the rise of these biscuits. This is flour I just make from a recipe online. I'll share that with you. And then we're going to add some baking powder for more lift and rise. Getting that in there. And then some baking soda. There we go. So we've got our dry ingredients together, and so we're just going to give that a mix. And now we're going to add some cold salted butter. So the recipe says to grate the butter. You can chop it up into little bits and then use a pastry blender to get your butter in there. So we're going to add a few sticks of butter. Now we've got our butter in there, so we're going to incorporate our dry ingredients with our butter. You just can really get your hands in there. The butter will help the biscuit to be nice and flaky when it bakes and melts in the oven. So now we're going to take a couple of eggs. Mix that up and stir that into our flour and butter mix. Then next we're going to get our buttermilk in here. Get that mixed around. So the buttermilk should help your mix to come together. We recently moved back to the south, and I find that the recipes that we made when we were living up north requires different amounts of ingredients, especially when it comes to flour. So if this recipe is a little dry, add a little more buttermilk. If it's too wet, add a little bit more flour. Okay, so it's come together pretty good. The recipe says it'll come together in a sticky mass. I feel that I've accomplished that. Now that the dough is put together, this will sit covered in a refrigerator for about 30 minutes, or it can sit overnight for you to make in the morning. So now that our biscuit dough is in the refrigerator, we'll make our sausage gravy. All right, so we've got our pot on the stove. It's warming up. So we've got some sausage. Have about a pound of sausage thawed out, and we'll get that cooking. In the cookbook, there is a recipe for sausage gravy if you would prefer to make that. If you have the cookbook, she might have it on her website. But this is just a basic throw together sausage gravy recipe that we usually do that I'll be showing you. Try to chop up the clumps a little and then crisp up the edges. All right, so our sausage, there's some crispy bits and some of the grease is coming out and it's cooked through. So the next step we do is we add some flour. So the flour will absorb the grease and help thicken up your gravy. And we're gonna cook that together for a minute or two. Now sometimes when I see that there's more grease in there, I like to clump that up a little bit more or dry it out a little bit more. So I'll add a little bit more flour to absorb that up. I'm just adding a little bit at a time. So we're going to let that cook for about a minute or two. So after that cooks for 1 to 2 minutes, we're going to add in our milk. And I usually add milk to cover-ish the meat. Since I did add some extra flour, because of the grease in the sausage, this will be thicker than usual, so I might add a little more milk. So we're going to let that come to a boil and thicken to a gravy. Definitely need to add more milk. I like to add some shoyu, and that helps to brown the gravy a little bit. And then we'll add some black pepper. And our gravy is ready. It's very thick. All right, so our dough is ready. We're gonna get some flour on the bench here. And we're gonna scrape this out of the bowl. We're not gonna handle it a lot. We're just gonna put that on here and put that together. It should make about 20 biscuits. We've got our biscuit cutter ready. The recipe said it should be about a 1/2 inch tall. And we'll just start cutting. And the recipe also says to put the biscuits together, touching on your parchment lined cookie sheet. And you just squish that back together. Try not to overwork it. And usually the second batch I make a little taller because I find that it doesn't raise as much. Usually. Not sure how these biscuits, I don't remember what these biscuits are like in that sense. We'll see. So these are a little taller and more craggly. But they'll still turn out delicious. So I just kind of maybe I'll just form this one together. Let me see. Just form it together in this shape and size. We'll have used all of our dough. All right. So now that our biscuits are put together, we're going to brush it with a little bit of buttermilk and a beaten egg. This will help give it its lovely shine, and it'll brown it up real nice. Our biscuits are brushed, so it's going to go in a 400-degree oven for 15 to 20 minutes till they're brown. Nice and buttery. Now we're going to plate together our biscuits and gravy. So here's a biscuit. It's cooled a little bit. Oh, it's falling apart in my hands. It's nice and flaky, and it just comes right apart. Very soft. Smells very buttery, and you can see the steam coming off of that. So we're gonna pull that apart, set that in our bowls. We'll get some gravy on that. Nice and thick gravy. This will be real good to have leftovers tomorrow. Very tasty. We salt and peppered it to taste. We like to have our biscuits and gravy with an egg, so we'll get some fried up. All right, so we've got our biscuits and gravy with our egg on it, and we'll taste test it for you. Absolutely. So buttery. These biscuits are great. We highly recommend this biscuit recipe from the Magnolia Table Volume 1 cookbook. So thanks again for coming on another kitchen adventure. I hope you make it, eat it, and enjoy.